Welcome, travelers, to my realm of nightmares. Allow me to be your personal assistant. Come in, take a seat, get comfortable. For when you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.
It didn't take long for Archie to come to his senses. He knew exactly what we had to do. We had to find out who was behind all this and what was really going on. I suggested the best place to start would be the woods between Oakwood and Avilocan. It was decided Archie's home, although it was a dump, would be our base, since I figured no one would have eyes on it, at least not for a little while. We would reconvene here every night to talk about anything we found out and discuss our next steps. Something else occurred to me while we spoke that first night. I never made it to the second clearing in the woods that night. I went for my walk. This particular clearing is just north of the spider, but there had always been something so unusual about it, and I've never been able to put my finger on it. 57 222 924 -3 818 597. These are the coordinates for this area. If you look it up, you will notice it's naturally green. So bright, in fact, that nowhere within miles is actually that green. Additionally, there's always a sense of being watched, though not in a sinister way. It's as if you are being held and you're safe, like you're being guarded against, all around in a bubble. All of this began in those woods. I had decided that was probably where we were going to go first, to see if I could find anything at all. That very night, after I got Archie a good meal and made him rest up, we would head over to Oakwood to investigate. There was no time to waste. I drove his beat-up-old Nissan to the camping ground, and we sat at the entrance a while. I described to him what the plan was. Put simply, we would head straight along the trail until we were pretty much in line with the clearing, then head directly through the woods, quietly, and avoid being distracted by anything that made us feel uneasy, such as noises or weird men casually walking around alone. Basically, keep our eyes on the prize, I said. It was 1 a.m. exactly when we exited the vehicle and made our way through the gate to Oakwood, heading straight for the trail at the top. There are no voices from the campground this time. As we reached the trail, I started getting goosebumps all over, remembering everything that had happened a little over a week ago. It felt like I had forgotten, like it was a distant memory that had all come rushing back to haunt me, and it made me weak at the knees, just thinking about what probably lay ahead. I took a look overhead. The moon was full tonight and bright as ever. The sky was clear, and the familiar stars and constellations twinkled in delight at my return. I looked at Archie, who didn't seem half as fazed as I did. "We going for it then?" I nodded my head. "Fucking right we are," he replied, nodding back. We set off along the trail. Wind brushed the treetops on either side to break the quiet. I felt uneasy, expecting to see someone appear from the distance or from the tree line at any second. Archie marched beside me with purpose. I'm not sure he believed me when I told him what happened the last time I was here. I didn't mind. His confidence gave me a boost, if anything. We walked around for 10 minutes through the trail, and we were approaching the bend. What lay beyond, I dreaded to think. I began to feel the hairs on my neck prickle up, as a vile, icy wind came from behind and slapped us with cold. I pulled my collar up and shivered, my breath now visible in the air. As we hit the turning point, I heard something. I could feel those familiar eyes piercing me from every angle, but I made sure not to look anywhere but straight ahead. I heard it again. "Welcome." It sounded like a soft, slow whisper. Then, "Welcome back." This was a little more clear, but sounded like multiple whispers from all around us. I stared straight ahead. I could now see the final straight of the trail leading to the lake. I turned to Archie. His confident demeanor had faded rapidly. and he looked like he was ready to turn back. "We've come this far, Archie. It'll be okay," I reassured him, although I'm not sure he was quite convinced. I saw his jaw drop as he looked ahead and to the left. I looked up. About 40 to 50 feet away, a head was peeking out from behind a tree. Wide, dark eyes, and white as a sheet. The face was grinning and motionless. A soft mist fell, and the head was gone. "What way is this clearing bit we're going to? Left or right?" Archie asked, voice shaking and full of uncertainty. "It's left," I replied. "Right. Fuck this Blair Witch Project shit. I'll get you back at the car." "I'm not going in there," Archie said, already turning on his heels. I grabbed his arm. "Archie, don't worry. If anything happens, we'll stick together. If you run back alone, what do you think is going to be waiting for you around that corner?" Archie sighed. "Well, we should both go back then. Come during the day. This is fucked up." I grabbed both of his arms. "Listen, Archie. We are never going to find anything here during the day, except tourists and idiots. We're here to find out what goes on at night. If shit hits the fan, then we run. But we run together, and we stick together, no matter what." Archie gave another big sigh. "Right. Fuck. Okay, move. Let's do this, and hurry up." I turned back towards the lake. The mist was getting a little thicker now. We couldn't see too far ahead. We both stopped in our tracks for a moment to listen, as we heard more whispering coming from our front and to the left. It was mostly unintelligible, like a crowd of people whispering different words all at once. The fog rolled from left to right and got progressively thicker. I heard torqued ropes swinging slowly from branches, and the whispering got more frequent. Our pace had slowed, and suddenly we come to a halt. In the fog, not far ahead, there were 7 figures standing in a line, black as coal and tall with hooded robes. They stared as we stared back, and slowly, one by one, they moved to the tree line, like they were floating or gliding. I never saw any movement from their legs. My heart was pounding into my chest. We were almost at the point where we should head into the woods, but I decided to go in now. Getting through to the green clearing and fast, and avoiding getting any closer to those figures in the fog. The whispering became louder, and it seemed more aggressive. The fog became thicker. I thought I saw some bodies hanging from the trees, so we adjusted our path accordingly, making sure to steer away. Sometimes the whispers seemed to swirl around us like a tornado of hate, and we changed directions slightly. They had come from only a certain way, as if they were leading us to where we had to be. We were now literally following the whispers before I even realized that's what Joe told me to do. A dim yellow and orange glow made itself visible as we approached the clearing. Still through thick wood, but flickers of light danced past us every few steps. It grew brighter as we got closer. I already knew, but confirmed it to myself anyways, that it was a fire. I heard laughing and whispering mantras from behind the 3 or 4 layers of trees that separated us from the green grass. There were several hooded figures standing in a line as 2 others walked back and forth, making signs with their hands and making everyone drink from a large bowl or chalice type thing. It seemed like there was absolutely no fog here. We looked all around and saw nothing beyond about 2 trees in every direction, but looking into the clearing, we could see everything clear as day. I felt a soft hand caress the back of my head. I flinched and found nothing behind me. I was so close to screaming, but I knew I couldn't give away our position. We inched forward. Still, the whispering went on, and the fire raged. One of the hooded men was making hand gestures as if he was controlling the fire, as it waltzed about 10 feet high before him. Every now and then, he would throw something onto the fire that would make it burst into a ball of flame and light up the whole area. During one of these, I noticed there were hooded people watching from the tree line behind them. Another burst, I saw more, to the left and right. Another, and another. Every time it happened, I saw more and more of them around the clearing, watching from the shadows. I felt ice on my neck. My eyes started to go hazy as I felt those grotesque, long fingers snake around my neck, and a slow, deep, gargling growl like a beast stalking its prey. I tried my best to keep my eyes open and to make out the faces of any person in the robes before me. I looked at Archie. There was a glowing white visage with sharp pointed grinning teeth nose to nose with him. He smiled a huge grin in return, and his eyes rolled back as he fell to the ground and began to seize. The last thing I saw was foam pouring out from between Archie's larger than normal teeth as he smiled and shook all over, grinning with increasing intensity. The last thing I felt was the grip around my neck tightening. Then I felt like I was being cradled to sleep. Then my eyes began to roll back. I was in a dark room, bound to a wooden chair. The rope around my waist burned my skin. A single black candle cast a faint glow. There were around 7 hooded figures lined up in front of me, one waving some kind of incense that smelled like putrid shit. They began to approach me. I tried to scream. I tried vigorously to free my hands. I felt like I was about to have a heart attack, and then I woke up. Beads of morning dew scurried down my face. I had no idea what the hell happened. I was lying in damp grass in the center of the clearing. Archie was gone. I got to my feet. My body ached as I tried my best to move myself around to see if there was anything or anyone in sight. There was nothing. No people, no fire, no evidence there was ever anybody there just hours earlier. The only thing I did notice was some small polished looking round stones near the north side of the clearing. They are arranged in 2 V shapes and a circle. Apart from that, there is nothing, not even any sign of a fire. I sat on a stump for a few minutes. I needed strength in my legs. I didn't even know what time it was. I started heading back to the trail and then to Oakwood. I assumed Archie bolted and took the car, but when I got the entrance in my sight, the car was still there. There were people standing by it. One looked very familiar, and as I got closer, my worst fears were realized. Williams stood by the car smiling as he watched me walking towards it. "New car, Cammy?" He smiled as he asked full well, knowing it wasn't mine. Apparently the owner phoned the police about a car blocking the entrance. Why a detective chief superintendent would have to respond to a call would be beyond most people, but I knew exactly why he was there. "It's not actually my car," I replied, shaking my head. Well, get this car towed then, buddy. We'll see who picks it up," he said, still smiling. "In the meantime, why don't you hop in my car? I think we should take a drive. I have an update on Julian's case." I agreed without a word. I just climbed into his car, happy to feel the soft leather seat. I sat with my head in my hands as Williams got in next to me. He turned and stared at me for longer than felt comfortable. I could see him in my periphery, but I did not respond. He then gave a chuckle and started the engine. It purred loudly as we pulled out of the camp entrance. "So, Cameron," he started. I already felt sick at the possibilities of what was to come. He continued, "What's this all about? Spending the night in some woods? Creeping around a campsite?" I lifted my head and looked straight forward, noticing he wasn't driving towards town. I was looking for Julian. I must have passed out or something. I haven't been sleeping well." Williams looked at me. His massive form seemed almost too big for the car. He gave me the fear. "Ah," he exclaimed. "Well, that's good to see. Such dedication." I looked at him for the first time. He was still smiling. "Where are we going?" I asked nervously. "Just taking a little scenery. Calm ourselves down a bit. It's been a long night for both of us," William said, his eyes darting between me and the road. He almost slowed to a halt and took a cut off the road into some more forest. A few miles north, from what I could tell, he pulled the car over in the middle of some of these trees. "Get out." His voice changed, and the fake smile became a very real frown. I quickly did as I was told. Williams got out after me. He came up close to my face. "No, Cameron," he began in a low yet aggressive tone. "I specifically told you to keep your mouth shut," he hissed, spit flying from his mouth. A rage that seemed to come from nowhere. I kept my mouth shut. I spoke back like a disobedient child. I haven't said a word to anyone. Is that so? He replied. Then what the fuck were you and that junkie Archie doing in the woods? I know that was his car. What are you talking about? I don't know why his car was there, but I was looking for Julian, that's all. I lied unconvincingly. Sure, okay, but the thing is, I know you're full of shit, Cameron. I saw both of you, and you saw far too much. He snarled, his voice growing in anger. He punched me in the gut. It felt as though my ribs had wrapped all the way around his fist. I dropped to the ground, struggling to breathe. What did you do to Archie? I managed to push out between deep, labored breaths. I don't know where he is. He's probably away buying some heroin, that fucking scumbag. He went on after clenching my whimpering body as I knelt on the ground. But when I find him, he's a fucking dead man. He already had his last chance, and now I'm giving you yours. He brought his fist down and hammered the back of my neck. This is the last time I want to have to tell you this. Keep your fucking mouth shut, and don't go around looking in places you have no business being. He turned around and took a step towards his car and opened the driver's door. Cameron, he called out as he sat inside. I looked up at him, defeated in body and mind. I almost forgot. If you ever want to see your son alive again, do not fucking cross me. Ever. Again. He slammed the door and sped off, leaving me broken on the marshy soil. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to get up and kill him, but I had absolutely no fight left in me. I lay there sobbing for the longest time. I didn't know what I could do next, if anything. I woke up. I checked my phone. 1:51 a.m. I felt sick. The painkillers I had were making me drowsy, but my insomnia would always prevail. The feeling they gave me was horrible when I would wake in the middle of the night. Usually, it helped sometimes to get up and get something to eat, but I was especially sore this night. It had been 6 days since I saw Williams at Oakwood. Whatever happened the night before had left my bones and my whole body in agony. I struggled to walk. I struggled to eat. I even struggled to piss. I still hadn't heard from Archie or anyone else. Not Linda, not the police, not the nurse, none of my friends, nobody. I knew there were sporadic searches for Jules going on, but I was never able to attend, although nobody ever contacted me to tell me they were happening. I only knew from seeing bits and pieces in the local paper. I felt completely isolated. I can't think why Linda, of all people, wouldn't have come to check on me at least once. Not even wondering why I wasn't looking for a son anymore. I spent the past few days in bed awake. I would get an hour or two of sleep here and there, but even falling asleep had me scared. I was having these horrendous reoccurring nightmares about the woods, about the dark room I was in. The faces I had seen often hiding, watching my every move, getting closer as the days went by. I kept hearing whispers and chanting when I was about to fall asleep. When I would close my eyes, I would see that dim glow through the trees, and I would start getting closer against my will. Then at the last second, a rope around my neck would pull me up, and I'd be swinging from a branch. Just another body in the woods. The chanting would get louder as the light slipped away from me, and my eyes grew darker and heavy. Then I would wake up. Tonight, I had a different dream. I'm sure it was a dream. Honestly, I hope it was. I was lying in bed. It was just after 11 p.m., and my TV shone a soft pale glow around my room as I sat on Netflix while I did the usual, spending about 2 hours looking for something to watch. As I flicked through the seemingly endless titles nobody had ever heard of, I heard a thud, like a bag of sand falling from a height. It came from outside, so I ignored it and continued. I heard another thud, then another quickly after. I turned my head to face the window, wondering what it was. I heard another 2 or 3 in quick succession. This was followed by a kind of scraping sound, not like metal or stone or wood. It was like someone was dragging a bag of metal across the road. I heard more thud, 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 thud. More dragging, scraping noises soon followed. I struggled to get myself out of bed. The painkillers were wearing off, and my muscles were cramping from laying down so much. I slowly walked to the window, startled by another set of thuds as I got closer. They were coming very regular now. Thud, 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 every few seconds. I got to my window and cut my hands around my face, obscuring the reflection of my TV and room. There were severed heads rolling along my street. Every one of them had their eyes wide open, staring directly at me. As they rolled along casually, some of them smiling and laughing, some of them scowling and baring their teeth at me like a dog, all of them rolling in the same direction, towards the woods. I took a step back. Thud! A loud noise from behind me almost made me collapse in fear, as I heard the slow dragging sounds start towards me. The next thing I knew, it was 1:51 a.m., and I'm in bed, drenched in sweat. I couldn't tell if it was real or not. My dreams sometimes bleed into reality, and vice versa. Sometimes I'd black out and wake up in a different room. It always seemed like everything was telling me to go back to those woods, something I didn't want to do. When I got my strength back, I knew I'd probably end up back there. I'd rather die trying to save my son than let this fucking weird cult, or whatever they were, get away with it. 6 a.m., and someone has been banging on my back door for almost a half an hour now. I eventually managed to get myself downstairs, and I see a silhouette through the frosted patio glass. "Who is it?" I shouted, acting like I was strong enough to take on any intruder. They knocked again. "Cammy," a loud whisper came through. "It's Archie. Let me in." I quickly opened the sliding door. Archie fell inside. He had his ear against the glass, listening for my response. He probably didn't think I would just open the door. "Fuck," he moaned as he picked himself up. "You could have warned me." I wasn't interested. I just went back and sat down. "Shut the door. What's going on? Where the fuck have you been, man?" I asked, annoyed but glad to see he was alive at least. "Cammy, I had to leave you. I'm sorry. I didn't want Williams finding me." I looked at him. "What, so you just left me?" "I tried to get you up, but you were kicking me and screaming and shit. I wanted to hit the car, but I saw Williams rattling through it like he was looking for something. So I went a different way and tried to stay out of sight until I could find anything else out," he explained. He seemed genuinely apologetic in his tone, but at the end of the day, he still left me laying in the woods. "And, did you find anything out?" I asked. "I did, Cammy. You won't believe this shit, man," he said, standing up. My ears perked up. After this past couple of weeks, I doubt I'll ever doubt anything again. "What did you find out, Archie?" Now I'm more interested than ever. Archie began. "When I left, I went home. My house had been ransacked. I think it was just a message. Nothing was taken. So I'm assuming they knew from the start we were working together. So I went to the inverse, to my mom's house to lay low. I borrowed her car and drove during the nights. The first place I went was a cemetery where Ben was buried." He made air quotations with his fingers when he said the name Ben. "I dug up another 2 random graves in the stillborn memorial site. Both had dolls in them." He looked at me dead in the eyes. "Whoever is involved in this cover-up, it must go pretty high. There's newborn babies taken from expectant parents. God knows for what, and nobody has ever mentioned it. Then I checked the names on the graves. There have been stillborns buried there on the same month every year. The furthest back I saw was over 30 years ago. Of course, I didn't check every one. There wasn't much time." He paused and waited for my reaction. I was dumbfounded. For over 30 years, babies have been taken from their parents at birth. I don't even know what to say, Archie. I stuttered. "That's fucking insane. And what else did you find out?" I asked eagerly. He sat down and continued, "Well, the night after that, I waited outside the police station to see if Williams came out. I got there about 10 and sat low in the car and watched. I didn't see him, but I saw that black van you mentioned leaving the car park. There were 2 people inside." He pulled a crudely drawn map from his coat. I followed a few more minutes. Then, the next night, I waited at the place I stopped the night before to see if they would pass again. Sure enough, it drove right by me. So I followed for another few minutes. Bit by bit, I followed it, night after night. It goes out of town every night at the same time. I managed to follow the lights from a distance while I drove behind. There's a cutoff in the woods from the road about a mile past Locon on the A9. It leads to a winding crossroads in the woods. I couldn't go too far in, but I stopped and watched until the lights disappeared, and have drawn a kind of map to where I followed it to. He handed me a map. I studied it and I asked, "So, what happened after that? Did you find out where it leads to?" "Fuck that. I came straight here. We need to go together," he said, clenching his fists as if he was giving a motivational speech. "Okay, well, I can't go right now. I can barely move. But I'll try to get myself fit again, and we go from there. In the meantime, I suggest you lay low at your mom's again," I said, getting myself to my feet. "Come back in a couple of days. I don't want to start using phones and shit. I don't know what these people have planted in here. It could be anything." Archie nods. "No worries, Cammy. Get yourself better. I'll see you soon." He left seconds later without another word, and I dragged myself up the stairs, bones aching and muscles cramping. The painkillers lay on my bedside table. They made me feel like shit, so I was probably going to have to give them up for a start. Just try and power through the pain, try and walk more, and get my muscles working. That night, I fell asleep about midnight. I had a dream where I was strangling Julian, while hooded figures stood in a circle and laughed maniacally. I cried and cried as his lifeless body dangled from my tightly gripped hands. I woke a half an hour later. Thud, thud, thud. I knew that sound, and I did not want to see that again. I pulled the covers over my head and turned the volume of my TV up. Why was I being tormented constantly? I lay awake for hours just listening to the thuds and dragging sounds. It was like the TV was incapable of drowning anything out. My body screamed for painkillers. My mind screamed for peace and quiet. I wished I could just sleep, just for one night. I made it through the next 2 nights, feeling progressively worse. Archie visited, but I wasn't ready. I told him to try again in maybe a few days. I wasn't optimistic, though I would try my best. The following 3 days and nights were much the same, in constant pain and no sleep, usual recurring nightmares. I was beginning to feel like I'd lost my mind. I was vomiting, couldn't eat, my eyes were bloodshot and sore, but finally I was able to walk without screaming in pain or needing painkillers. Archie arrived again. He had a very different expression on his face, one of fear, of a man driven mad by some traumatic event. He came in and sat down. "Archie, what's wrong?" I asked him, and he stared into space. "I went to a place during the day, Cammy. I don't know what it is, but there's evil there. I can hear shrill screams of pain and anguish. The smell of rot flesh filled the whole area, and there were burn pits still smoldering. There were things inside them. I hope it was just animals, but I'm scared it wasn't." He put his hands over his face. "We should go back during the day, just to check it out, so I can have a look too, and we can come up with some sort of plan," I suggested tentatively. "Yeah, that's probably a good idea," he agreed after a few moments of silence. "Should we bring anything with us?" I asked, just trying to fill the silence. "I don't know. We should maybe take some sort of weapons. I don't really think we should stay that long though. In and out, we need to be quick," Archie replied, still covering his face. Okay, I'll see what I have." I went out to the shed in my back garden. There was a whole bunch of gardening tools I hadn't touched in years. I pulled out a pitchfork and a garden hoe. Then 2 of the largest knives from the kitchen I had. It was the best I could think of. "This is pretty much it, unless you know anyone with a gun," I jested, remaining half serious. Archie just looked at me. We did know some farmers. Whether they had guns or not, we couldn't say for sure. In any case, I highly doubted they would just give us one if they did. We ate some lunch at my house, packed Archie's mom's car with stuff we had, and set off. It would only be about a 20 to 30 minute drive. Archie's face was still glum, looking genuinely terrified the whole way. As we turned into the forest, he was muttering to himself incoherently. We rolled up to a small patch of woods with a lower density of trees and bushes. Just beyond there lay a large log cabin, and just like Archie had said, there were black burnout pits dotted around. I told him I wanted to go and have a quick look a bit closer. He was extremely reluctant to get out, so he remained in the car. I got out. The foul stench in the air was thick. It almost felt humid and smelled like rotten meat. There was an unbelievable sense of hostility and dread surrounding this place. I almost didn't go any closer, but I wanted to just peek inside a window at least. The dried out leaves and twigs crumpled and crunched under my boot. I tried to stay as silent as I could. I tried not to breathe. My heart was beating out of my chest as I rounded a burn pit. There seemed to be charred bones in the middle, surrounded by blackness, and the whole pit reeked of death. The hairs on my neck sprung up. I had a horrible feeling. The putrid, toxic air choked me as I got closer. The windows were caked in dirt and difficult to see through. I peeked inside one, and I saw nothing, an empty bedroom by the looks of it. I glanced back at Archie in the car. He looked worried and desperate to leave. I held up one finger to him. I would just be one more minute. He shook his head, and I turned around the side of the cabin to the next window. I got on my tiptoes as the window was higher. I just managed to peer over the ledge. This was a large room, almost like a kind of hall. There were statuettes and symbols all over. What struck me, though, was that the room was almost entirely painted red from floor to ceiling. It felt like a pure malevolent force was drawing me in, pulling me closer, consuming my soul. The sheer belligerence of some unknown being emanated hatred and malice of the highest potency. My senses had been compromised, my vision started to blur, and the silence was absolute. A twig snapped behind me. "Excuse me, sir?" A familiar shaky voice broke the dead silence. Tonight's stories were entries 4 and 5 from the series Tales from an Insomniac, written by Reggaejunkiegee. If you're enjoying this story as much as I am, please let him know. The links to his Reddit as well as all of his other social medias will be in the description below. Hey, did you have merch? Well, I do. And if you like to walk around representing my realm and gaining new travelers, the links to my merch store as well as all of my other social medias will be in the description below. As always, I'd like to say a special thank you to all my lovely Patreons. 242 Reads, Rando Calrissian, Seraphine the Midnight Bard, Hair Raising Narratives, Spooky Boo Scary Storytime, Lycan Trucker, Awkward Alien Kayla, and Pimp Demon. And if you'd like to join these lovely travelers by Love My Fire, you can do so by becoming a Patreon as well. Just remember, support is always appreciated, but it's never expected. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and ding that bell for all future content if you're new, as it will really help push this video into the algorithm and helps the channel grow.
But as always, travelers, once you step into my realm, there's no stepping out.